Yes, it's Malik 16, still in the red, black, and green, and no, still not a neck brace, but it is breathing a little bit more today. And yeah, I am still in the B-boy stance because we are still going back to the golden era to review this classic hip-hop album by Eric B. and Rakim, Follow the Leader. And I'm not gonna waste your time. We're gonna get right into category 2, which is the rapper's performance on the album. Hopefully you all watched video 1 where we went over category 1, which is the product, the album itself. Now, dimension 1 of this category is going to be the personality and charisma factor. How compelling is the rapper on this product, and how much do they make you care? Now, naturally, we're talking about Rakim, the God MC, which I believe at this point in time, they had started already calling him the God MC. And so you understand that there's already this mythos and this legend that's already been built up from the first album. And what happens is that Rakim continues that. And I mentioned in video 1 where we were questioning whether there was an intentional mood or tone on this album, the idea that Rakim was really trying to cement and position himself as the leader, which is why the album's called Follow the Leader, but the leader of his new school, this new generation that he was at the forefront of these rappers who were stepping it up and raising the bar. And I think, that's where we get the personality, and it kind of takes on its own life on this album. And I think more than personality, what you get here is the persona. Rakim made it very much a part of his approach that he is this no joke, nobody smiling, serious demeanor rapper, and the words match that. And so I think what is captivating, what grips you in here and hooks you in as a listener is wanting to know more about what makes that tick. So while you might not be getting all 3 dimensions of the man, his vulnerabilities and things like that, what you are gonna get is an explanation throughout this album. And so something you want to consider on a scale from 1 to 5 heartbeats when you're ranking this dimension, which is the personality and charisma factor. And that takes us to dimension 2, which is suspension of disbelief or believability in general. Now, this is not an album that's asking you to suspend any disbelief, so we can already count that out. Rakim is not going into a character, and at no point on this album do you feel like he is not being who he says he is. The thing where you may not be getting all shades and tones of him as a human being, he's not playing a role. He's very much about this, I'm the leader, I'm gonna prove to you why I'm the leader. Actually, I don't need to prove, just shut up and listen. And I'm still no joke. And that is drilled into every song on the album. Like, he's telling you why he's unique, he's explaining it. And so the question to you is, how much do you believe what Rakim is saying? And something for you to consider as you rank this dimension 2 on a scale from 1 to 5 heartbeats. Dimension 3 is, I think, maybe the third part of that whole conversation of personality and believability. And this, of course, is the use of the voice and the delivery. Delivery has everything to do with timing and how the voice is used. Now, Rakim has always been a standout for having this really unique mix of a nasal tone, a deep voice, and a monotone pattern. And so you put those together and it really makes this harmonious blend that makes him one of a kind. And that is present all throughout the album. But what he does here that we hadn't heard him do up to this point is he's projecting. He's adding a degree of pushing his vocals out that make it more of an aggressive presence. He picks up the pace, and we'll talk about that more in the next dimension, but the pacing and the intonation from that projection and that vocal inflection is different here. There's more force and energy behind it. And so I think that makes for the way the words land too. So his timing is more in pocket because he's more deliberate about where his words land in conjunction with where the drums and where the bass lines land. And he wants to step it up. And you can tell this is him trying to outdo himself on his last performance and just trying to be better than himself because he's seeing himself as his only, real match. Okay, so that's something to consider on a scale from 1 to 5 heartbeats, the delivery and the use of voice and tone and just the timing altogether, all right? Now, dimension 4, flow. Just as I mentioned where he's picking up the pace, the flow has been upgraded on this album. Where you do get those mellow moments, Rakim is not coming in trying to waste any of your time or waste any bar space. He's packing words into the rhyme schemes. The rhyme schemes have elevated a little too, even though he's the pioneer of this multi-syllable style, he's using more syllables than he used before. There are flow changes within verses. Rakim will playfully go into a different flow for about 4 bars and then go back into the flow that he was using. And so you can tell he's feeling more free and just more masterful over the way he's using words, how many words he wants to use per bar, and it's really shining and showing here. And the pacing, he's rapping more words, he's rapping faster on this album. So really interesting stuff that we get here. Not this huge dramatic deviation. You still want that familiarity because this is still the era of having a trademark sound and style. And he's very, straightforward about that, owning his style. But you can also tell he's trying to upgrade it. All right, so something to consider on a scale from 1 to 5 heartbeats. That is the flow dimension. Now, we get into wordplay and bar intent. If the intentional mood and tone of this album was to prove that he is the leader, well then the word usage just is the key component of that. And so it's super evident on a track like the opener, the title track, Follow the Leader, where he does this thing. Anybody who's ever studied or read that first verse on Follow the Leader knows that he takes this metaphor towards the end of it, or this conceit when it's a long metaphor that continues, of being intergalactic. And he's actually telling you, follow him. He's going to take you on a trip right outside of the Milky Way. You're going to see nothing but darkness until you see a star, and even satellites can't track him. But when you see this star, you realize that he's the star, so you might as well start following him like they used to with constellations and compasses. That, my friends, is conceit. That is the use of a long metaphor. That is poetic imagery, and that is what Rakim is famous for. Now, throughout the album, you get, other really clever things. Like on this same song, you're gonna hear this couplet here where he goes, in this journey, you're the journal, I'm the journalist. Am I eternal or an eternalist? So you get alliteration, you get these entendres, and this wordplay where he's questioning himself. There's this internal monologue, but even that is a play on words, and it's more of a rhetorical question to you. Really just clever things like that throughout this album. There's no shortage of similes on here. He says some cute lines in between, like, rappers suck up styles like a vacuum. Then he proceeds to tell you all the different ways that rappers take flows and bite styles, which is something he's really serious about on this album. And then he says something like static, which is an old school slang for beef. Static, I don't cling. I got my own tip and nah, I don't sing. So, lines like that where he's going in, and then, subliminal shots, because this was, like I said, that timing where there was that street rumbling, those murmurs on the street about EPMD and Parrish Smith having a similar style and who's copying and who's not. And then, he has that line where he says, dig 'em, I never dug 'em, which according to Rakim, he says was a subliminal shot based on the song where EPMD says, dig 'em, smack me and I smack you back, that whole thing. And then right before that, he does say word to daddy, which, I'm thinking might have been a shot towards the other person that they said he was in competition with, which is Big Daddy Kane. Don't get me to speculating. This is not the channel for that. So, don't quote me on that. But he's very deliberate on this album about there being no competition. He wants to end that debate. And on the song No Competition, which is sprinkled heavily with 5% teachers and God body language, he says lines like 7 holes in my face, where I had to, rewind for a minute and be like, oh, there really are 7 holes in our face. So no lines are wasted on this album. Rakim comes out with all the wordplay in his arsenal, ready to go. It's something for you to consider on a scale from 1 to 5 heartbeats. Now, we get into dimension 6, which is the punchlines, wisdom, and quotability dimension. And again, this is late 80s Rakim, the whole no joke kind of approach. You're not going to hear him really leaning towards the funny, lines. I think, that static line might have been one of the closest that we get to tongue-in-cheek kind of stuff. Rakim is more about leaving you with that food for thought, words to chew on, things to think back on and be like, I can visualize that, right? But what you do get is a whole bunch of conventional wisdom and things that are easy to remember, because the way he left it open, even in the midst of flowing aggressively, he left it where you get these. And quotability is obviously there because rappers have used multiple lines from this album, like, performance never again performed on a mic. There's lots of that inherent in this album. So something for you to consider on a scale from 1 to 5 heartbeats when you're ranking this dimension of punchlines / quotability and wisdom. All right, now that takes us to the beginning of our 3 C's, dimension 7, concepts. This is not a concept album. I mentioned before that on the song Put Your Hands Together, he tries to take you into the mind frame of getting ready, how he prepares a song, how he gets ready to get on the stage. But, it's very loose, very loose. He weaves in and out of that throughout the song. Same thing on Microphone Fiend, which is a super loose concept where, at no point throughout the whole song does he stick to this idea of, becoming a fiend or taking on the properties of an addict. But, he makes enough references where it ties the song together. So it's a loose concept. There's lines, I'm trembling, feed me hip hop. And, I get a craving like I fiend for nicotine. But he's not going to stick to that rigidly, where throughout the song, every line is a reference to addiction. It's just not happening. But something to consider on a scale from 1 to 5 heartbeats if you think, the concepts hit hard enough, or if he could have went harder, or if it's lacking. Something for you all to consider. Takes us to the other C, dimension 8, and I'm going to put these together. Dimension 8 and 9 are both our content dimensions, which one is about the external, which is more the social consciousness and worldview, and the other is the internal, which is more about introspection and sharing from experience and self-reflection. And easy. We talked about this in video 1 about content versus the amount of songs. There's only 8 songs on this album where Rakim is actually performing, and there isn't much content. He doesn't really go anywhere in those domains. He doesn't speak on any world ills or any political views on this album, and he's not giving you any internal monologue or dialogue about his feelings besides what he wants to do on this microphone. And this is not the album for that. And you hear that later, of course, in his career, but not here. So something to consider. Maybe you all think that this is a weak point. Maybe you think it fits right in line if you only have 8 songs, but really something to consider in both dimensions and rank each on a scale from 1 to 5 heartbeats. And then we get to the final dimension, which is storytelling. There are elements of storytelling on each song when he tells you what he's going to do when he picks up a mic, or he tells you what's happening to you as he's on the mic. Again, put your hands together, what he's about to do when he gets on stage, when he's making the song, but no true, this is a story. I don't know if you think that is a weakness or not, but something for you to consider and rank on a scale from 1 to 5 heartbeats. And that is your category 2. That has been all 10 dimensions. And I cannot wait to see how you all rank this album. in the classic pantheon, if it stands as a high classic or a lower classic or somewhere in the middle. I am very interested to see how you all rank it. Again, when we return, of course, in the next video, we'll start by showing the averaged out ranking. I'll show my ranking. That'll be where I share what I had in here. And if any of you come super duper close to what that average is, then you will be the person who wins that gift certificate, or I'm going to call it a gift certificate, to any of our food partners. I'll tell you who the winner is. You give me your information. I'll send you the information, and within that information will be a list of all of our food partners, and feel free to shop to your heart's desire using whatever that coupon allots. I'm pretty sure it's going to be $16. There's going to be a lot of things on this channel that revolve around the number 16. Now, with that said, it has been a pleasure. I'm appreciating creating this global hip hop community with you all. If you have not already, take some time to like and subscribe to the channel. And I will see you next time. Until then, back in my B-boy stance, F for rap critic. Talk about it while I live it.